Hi everybody, I'm Jeff Myers. So I guess there are two ways to view, or three ways to view tonight's very modest turnout. One is that there's simply too many things scheduled for tonight. Two, Ann Arbor Heights are so in favor of public art that they're done with this conversation. Or three, they don't really care about the millage funding. Since life is choose your own adventure, I'm going to pick one or two. I'm not a managing editor. Concentrate for those of you who don't know me. Thanks for Conor O'Neill's. We do these about once a month, and this is, the turnout actually gave me pause because our turnouts are usually pretty gigantic. So it makes me think there must be something really spectacular happening tonight that I was not invited to. Our program is, I'm sorry my phone is making all sorts of noises. Our program, our speaker series is underwritten by the Michigan State Housing Development Association. So even though it's a small crowd, we have an opportunity to have kind of an intimate discussion about public art in our community and what the public art village might mean for Ann Arbor. I always like to find the quotes that I like to use for each one of these events. I always like Pablo Picasso's quote, which is, "Art washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life," which I thought was very poetic. But there's little doubt that personally, I'm a supporter of public art and public funding of the arts, which are not the same things, but I believe in both of them. I've written editorials about it, I've given talks about it, I've been a private supporter of arts. I even for a little while sat on the Ann Arbor Public Art Commission. Probably my favorite person speaking on art is graffiti artist and cultural jammer Banksy, if you're aware of who he is. I think a lot of his notions are in sync with my notions of public art, which is, he says there's no elitism or hype when it comes to public art. It exhibits on the best walls a town has to offer, and no one is put off by the price of admission. He says bus stops are far more interesting and useful places to have art than in museums. He talked mostly about graffiti, but I think it applies to public art. He says graffiti has more chance of meaning something or changing stuff than anything indoors. And even if you don't come up with a picture to cure world poverty, you can make somebody smile while they're having a piss. But enough about Banksy and what I think. I've invited two speakers to come this afternoon. Deb Pollock will be offering kind of a macro perspective on public art, and Christopher Taylor will be offering, particularly with regard to the proposed public art village, a micro perspective. And luckily we have actually another councilman here who can weigh in as well. So I'm going to start off with Deb. Deb has led the Ann Arbor-based art trade for 19 years as its president and CEO. This year she became executive director, I'm speaking right, of the Arts Alliance, an organization she was actually a founding chair of, right? Art Trade, if you don't know, is a traveling museum that takes art around the country via rail, brings mobile touring exhibits and cultural programs. The Arts Alliance supports local arts and cultural organizations, creative individuals, and businesses here in Washington County. So without any more ado, can you please give them an applause?
Okay, I turned off my phone. Can you guys hear me in the back, or do you need the mic? Do I need the mic? I'll probably end up losing my voice at some point. So one of the things I didn't do is learn how to speak well for long. Well, no pressure. Nobody's here. It's got to be the speaker, right? Actually, I think we're probably competing with a number of things tonight I know of, including a fundraiser for the Art in Public Places, Be for Art in Public Places campaign that's going on around the corner a bit, I think very soon. So my tour today was to give kind of a macro view of art in public places, and having no idea who was going to be in the room and who wasn't going to be in the room, I've kind of just put it together sort of like a background on what kinds of programs happen in the country, how they're funded, and those sorts of things. But I wanted to start out by, first of all, again, not knowing who was in the room, just stating what our mission as the Arts Alliance is, and it's to advocate and support the creative sector in our community, to ensure that our region remains a great place to live, work, learn, play, and visit. That's the work that we're involved with every day. We serve and partner with lots of folks. There's over 2,500 self-identified artists in our county, 244 cultural organizations that run the gamut, 1,328 arts-related businesses that employ about 4,000 people and account for a significant portion, in my opinion, close to 5.5% of our employment here in Washtenaw County. And we work very closely with the tourism, business, philanthropic, education, and government sector. And then the Arts Alliance constituents are those people that serve our 350,000 county residents, the students that come to our community, and 4.5 million annual visitors to the area. That number comes directly from the Convention and Visitors Bureau. What we do, we advocate for the sector, we facilitate by bringing people together around common subjects and opportunities. We communicate by promoting events, informing the sector on trends and those sorts of things. We try our best to educate both our own constituents, but also the community on arts and culture, and then to celebrate. So those are my 8s, 5 8s there. So my task today is to provide a macro view, as I already said, of art and public places. But I can't do that without setting a bigger picture of why investment in arts and culture and the creative sector is important to a community. Americans for the Arts, which is the national advocacy organization for the arts, for public art, and for businesses and the arts, put together top 10 reasons why communities should invest in arts and culture. I'm not going to read all of these, I'm just going to do the highlight parts. But the arts are an industry, and we're responsible employers and consumers. And we spend our money locally, and one of the things that this doesn't say is we rarely ever threaten to leave a community. So investing in this sector is an important thing. We're important for the 21st century workforce. The Conference Board reports that business leaders want creative individuals when they're hiring in this time and age, and that the kinds of skills, I understand they're called soft skills, that participation in arts and culture provide are the kinds of attributes that employers want. Arts are good for the local merchants. We spend about $27 per person per event in our communities. We're great for schools. Studies show over and over again that students that participate in arts and culture have higher SAT exams, and they stay in school longer, and academic performance is better as well. And that's regardless of social economic status. The arts are the cornerstone of tourism. I know that very, very specifically here in Washtenaw County, as a member of the the Ann Arbor Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, their studies, their reports show absolutely that arts and culture is one of the top 3 reasons that people come to this community. We're a creative industry, and we range from nonprofit museums to symphonies and to for-profit films, architecture, advertising companies, and the like. And there's a fair amount of Dun & Bradstreet data on this kind of thing, both on the state, the U.S. level and the state level. We're good for health and well-being. Studies are showing that patients and medical systems that use the arts in their programs, the healing process is quicker, and they spend less time in the hospital. We create stronger communities, and we create true prosperity. So those are the top 10 reasons why arts and culture, investments in arts and culture is important to a community. Public art falls right into that as a critical and point to quality of life. Communities that are committed to providing high quality of life for their citizens should invest in art and culture. There's lots of reasons why. Particularly though, it makes the places we live, work, play, learn, and visit more welcoming and beautiful, and it creates an anchor, an identifying kind of anchor for the locations that we visit. And I'm sure all of you have memories of places you've been around the world where there's been some either whimsical or wonderful installation that, or maybe whimsical and wonderful installation that you can recall. And public art, you know, we didn't used to have to define public art as public art. Communities invested in it, places invested in it, because they thought it was just important. And so they could go from statues, it could go to things like the Eiffel Tower, it could be the Millennium Egg in Chicago, the Calder in Grand Rapids, and so on and so forth. All of those things, and frankly, not all of them were well loved when they first went into place, have become really iconic, create iconic places and iconic images for those communities. So I kind of just went through this, but expressing community identity, demonstrating pride in place, increases the community's assets. Public art also adds dimension to civic places. It affirms the educational environment, differentiates neighborhoods and places, and beautifies transportation systems. Kind of like the Banksy discussion here. Put art in the bus stop. Oops, that's not supposed to be there. So there's lots of different types of public art, and I want to thank the Public Arts Commission for these different kinds of, these definitions. I'm not going to go through all of these, but you'll see, because there's, I mean, what are there? There's a dozen of them right here, different kinds of public art that communities invest in. That public art runs the gamut. It can be site-specific, it can be portable. It used to be pretty much public art had to be permanent. Most communities have decided to create public arts programs, wanted it to be permanent. Today, temporary installations have become really exciting and interesting. Even Detroit this weekend, De-Electricity is doing all this projection images on the buildings in downtown Detroit, and that will certainly draw a crowd to that. That's considered kind of a temporary installation. So lots and lots of different examples, from placemaking, from wayfinding to public street art, where you sit down on a bench that's pretty cool and whimsical. A bench that's fun, like this. One thing that is clear though is public art means art in public places. Those are places that are owned by government entities, and that's where the public part of it comes. Public art programs are established in lots of different ways, and usually they're established by some sort of an ordinance. Within an office of government, it identifies specific program management and establishes the basis for operating policy. In 2001, a national survey by Americans for the Arts showed that there were about 350 known public arts programs in the United States, and 75% of those were had specific public arts ordinance funding to support those programs. There's a fair number of different kind of public and government funding models. The methods used to fund public sector programs largely determines the quantity, type, and characteristics of the art that is purchased and invested in. And so some of those models include a percent for art program. You're probably, many of you, I know many of you in this room are familiar with those programs. It is the most popular across the country. It's that set-aside kind of dollar that comes from, usually a set-aside from a capital investment. The first percent for art program in the country was in Philadelphia. If you've been to Philadelphia, you can probably think of a number of places where public art is. And then I had already mentioned, well, as of 2000, there were 300 cities that have adopted public arts or percent for art programs. There's other ways to fund these. Taxes. Some communities, ours does not, but their bedhead tax or their hotel and lodging tax goes to support their public arts programming. You can put sales tax and use tax and sin taxes, although in the state of Michigan, a sin tax is like a tobacco tax or an alcohol tax, or those vice kinds of taxes. Yes, sin taxes. Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio has a cigarette tax that a certain amount of every pack of cigarettes goes to support their public or their arts programs. I heard somebody once say, well, that's great, but that's encouraging smoking. And somebody responded by saying, well, you can just buy the pack of cigarettes, you don't have to smoke them. And then villages are also another way that they're funded, and we'll talk here more about that from Christopher in a bit. There's also public-private funding models where there are joint city-county projects that often can also be involved with entrepreneurs or public companies in those locations. And then there's obviously private funding models through grants and gifts, federal and state grants, corporate sponsorships, sometimes benefit events and sales, or programs like the Cows on Parade in Chicago. You probably have heard of those, or the Cars in Detroit, or the elephants and donkeys in Washington, D.C. that artists decorate and then they're placed. And then sometimes there's cultural trusts that are set up. Good public arts programs, and this comes from the Public Arts Network, which is a national agency. Engaged citizens, they really invite the residents and the representation from all sectors. They educate the public on public art and placemaking. They set public art criteria. They have a selection process that is open and inclusive. They generally have maps of their public arts assets so people can find them easily, whether they're working directly with their tourism bureaus or on-site. There's a lot of GIS mapping for public arts all over the country. Some really cool models that are out there right now. And probably as important for the stewardship, the assignment of the responsibility and the accountability, the maintenance is very important to these kinds of programs. So great public art creates welcoming and memorable places. So that was my job, to kind of give you the big picture of how some communities, a lot of communities actually around the country have looked at this. And that was my tour, and I hope I've done a little bit of that. And now I think we're going to be talking with Christopher. Am I introducing him or are you, Jeff? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll do this correctly. Chris Taylor was first elected to Ann Arbor City Council in 2008. He's the council's liaison to the Ann Arbor Public Schools, sits on the council budget, administration, and rules committees, right? As well as the Parks Advisory Commission. He's an active supporter of the proposed public art village when he's not during late night council meetings. Chris is a partner at the Ann Arbor law firm of Hooper Hathaway, where his practice focuses on corporate and business law. Chris is going to give us an idea of the idea behind the village, some insight into how it would work and how it would impact the community. So if you give a warm welcome to Chris.
Thank you very much. It's also maybe worth noting that I have a music degree, and so although I don't know where that fits in the public art spectrum, it at least suggests I'm a fellow traveler of the people who put together the actual public art. So now that Deb has given you the broader picture, let's talk a little bit about Ann Arbor specifically. Ann Arbor obviously has a tremendous amount of value in arts and culture. It is really one of our distinguishing features. It's one of it's central to our brand identity as a place where people like to be. And Ann Arbor has long valued public art. You will see, our conversation tends to start in 2007 with the passage of the 1% for Art program, but public art in Ann Arbor existed before that. You have the Sculpture and Sculpture Park, the mosaics at the parking structure on Washington, the books in Hanover Park, for example. These are examples of public art that pre-exist prior to the 1% for Art program. Wishing, however, to formalize public art in Ann Arbor, City Council passed in 2007 a 1% for Art program. As Deb described, what this does is it takes 1%, broadly speaking, from capital projects, and it allocates it to the Public Art Commission and has it authorized to use for the creation of public art. Here in Michigan, we have a number of restrictions which have proven to inhibit the, I have this light behind me, have proven to inhibit the deployment of art. Because the money in these, thanks a lot. Because the monies from the capital projects which are going to this public art, that requires then that the art itself be linked with the source of those capital funds. So, for example, if there had been a stormwater project, is that me pounding?
Can you wrap this up?
You said you were a music
No, I can, baby. If there has been a capital project, for example, in the stormwater fund, which has sourced the 1% for our program, then those specific funds need to be used for a stormwater related piece of art. If the public art fund has been sourced by a water fund or a street fund or a parks fund, the art which is created from that money needs to continue to be linked very closely with the source of the funds. This inhibits the ability of the Public Art Commission substantially to be creative and to make decisions based upon public benefit, because there's always that overriding obligation to link the art with the source fund. This linkage, as well, of course, is the usage of capital dollars for public art rather than their initial purpose, has created conversation in the city such that it was thought that a more efficient, broader-based, more flexible way of sourcing public art would be advisable. Despite these challenges, I think the Public Art Commission has gotten off the ground and done a tremendous amount of work given the obstacles that they face. We all, of course, know about the Dreitzeitl project. There is two, the tree forms in West Park. There are the murals in Almond Digger, which are coming online. The Justice Center will have a major glass installation in it soon. And as two, there will be a rain garden art project on First and Kingsley. So these are things you'll see that you'll see from the current program in the city, and you'll see them upcoming. So what are we to do with the millage? The proposal was made recently then to create a millage to supplant the source of funds for public art, taking away that we no longer use capital dollars, but rather that we now use dollars collected straight through property taxes. The proposal is now on the ballot. It's proposal B, and asks the voters to authorize council to impose a levy of 1/10 of a mill sourced for public art. That 1/10 of a mill would raise property taxes on the average household owner approximately 91 cents a month, a little more than $11 a month, or pardon me, $11 a year. The millage, as it's proposed, would raise would be a 4-year millage, requiring renewal in another 4 years. It would raise approximately the same amount of money that the public art program has created for public art. It would also, in addition to depoliticizing the program, we have a tremendous benefit for public art in the city. Because the monies coming in through a millage do not labor under the same restrictions that capital dollars do, the Public Art Commission, as I said, would be able to create art merely considering the public good. That is to say, they can create temporary installations like the gates in Central Park. They can fund, if they choose, if they suggest and council approves, performance art in public places in order to enliven our city on specific days, and will allow them to distribute art throughout the city in a way that they've not yet had the opportunity to do so. So I think that with the, for my part, I'm an obvious advocate of the millage. It would create a more abundant art, more interesting art, more flexible art, and really give an example, provide an example of true public buy-in for something which I think is, although there is ample data to support it, to a certain degree, I believe it to be a self-evident good for the city. That, broadly speaking, is the history of the 1% for Art program and the millage that is intended to stand in for its funding for the next 4 years, and it's on the ballot in November. There it is.
Are you okay with taking some questions?
The questions are
actually Deb as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And maybe we should,
Brownies?
just so folks know, The Arts Alliance has been very engaged. Oh, I have to move over, sorry. The Arts Alliance has been very engaged in the Be for Art in Public Places campaign. We also have Marsha Chamberlain, who is here, who's the co-chair of that campaign with me, and Connie Rizzo-Brown, who's here, and I don't know if I see anybody else who's also on that campaign committee. So I just want to let folks know that, so that you were aware. And Christopher's been working on that campaign as well, too, so now questions.
Oh, just tell me, because when I like to argue something positively, I need to know the other side.
Yes.
So why wouldn't this be a complete no-brainer? If it's, $11 a year, this seems quite obvious to be a great thing. So there must be some people out there who feel differently, and why do they? What is the negative side of this that anyone would do?
Yeah.
We have to argue.
Sure, absolutely. I guess a couple of things. There was a period of time between the proposal being made and the proposal being voted on at City Council to put it on the ballot. During that intervening week and a half, say, I sent correspondence to constituents and folks on my email list, essentially soliciting their ideas about the proposal after having articulated a few of its deemed pros and cons. The pros we've sort of chatted about already. The cons, I think, are relatively standard for this sort of thing. Art is frivolous. Public, art and monies should be spent on core services. We have over the past X number of years had to cut staff in the city. We've had to reduce folks in police and fire. You're asking now for extra tax money for something that is not worthy. That we should be focusing on other things. Some folks have actually, in their responses to me, said that they like the 1% program as it is and don't want it messed with. So I think there are a couple of reasons to vote against it. I, for my part, of course, think that those reasons pale in comparison to the reasons to vote for it. But that is, I guess, how I broadly articulate the bullet points and counter.
I'd just like to add, although there are people that are questioning that, we've not really run up against any specific opposition to it, at least organized opposition to it at this point, and we're really pleased that it's really a nonpartisan issue, and that business leaders and cultural leaders and the like, government leaders, and that City Council voted unanimously to put it on the ballot. That was a good thing, so. I think I saw Jan back there with a question.
Yeah, I came to clarify in my own mind. The art linked with source funding, which was 1% of project, is that being replaced by this, or is this in addition to?
The passage of the millage would suspend further funding for the 1% program. So the funds would remain, the funds which have been allocated by council for art would remain in the art fund and would be spent, correct, and would be spent according to the dictates of the 1% program. That is to say, the capital monies would continue to be used for related art projects. But there would be no further allocation under the 1% program so long as the millage is in place.
And Christopher, that suspension happens right as of?
I believe it would happen as the ballot proposal was passed. It becomes a charter amendment authorizing the millage and by extension suspending the program during the pendency of the millage.
And the millage funding, as it starts to collect, will start?
July 13th.
So there will be a period of time between November and July that a lot of the administration decisions will be made. Everybody's kind of expecting it to mirror or to be almost exactly the same as the Art Public Places. The Commission on Art Public Places. Yeah, no, that's, you changed it, sorry. Public Art Commission, sorry. So there'll be time that some of those absolute details will be figured out, but it doesn't happen immediately.
Will this reflect then a decrease in funding as it is now, or an increase?
It will be approximately the same. Funding has fluctuated during the years of the 1% program, depending upon the number and extent of capital projects in the city. but historically speaking, it is approximately the same.
Just a quick question. The bridge at Stadium, is that considered a capital project, and is there currently an art project attached to that?
The bridge is a capital project. There is an RFQ, I believe, issued for...
There's actually an RFP out on, or at least it's within days of being issued for 4 sites in that Stadium Bridges project, including the park that's nearby. There's a pocket park, so there will be 4 different pieces of artwork there. There's also...
Just for clarification, because I've used RFP means request for proposal, for those of you that might not know that.
Does that include the university paying the street gold?
Actually, one of the ideas is a big block M.
Other questions?
I have a question for you. So, with the, in November, as you know, we have 3 villages on the ballot. Are there any concerns that while it's easy to get people to say they support something individually, when they see it in aggregate, there may be some reluctance to fund a millage along with other millages because it's all a matter of perception? I'm getting hit with so much more in this one year. If it didn't pass, what would be the ramifications for public art funding in the city?
Well, I guess it depends. I guess there would be no necessary change. That is to say, the 1% program could still continue. Depending upon the magnitude of the defeat, although for my part, I think that you would reasonably expect some folks on council to bring forward a measure to repeal or alter the millage in light of, thank you very much, to repeal or alter the ordinance in light of the fact that the people had voted against funding, a direct source of funding for public art. For me personally, that would certainly carry substantial weight. The feedback that I've received from constituents, that is to say, of some, minority, but some who were opposed to the millage on the grounds that they like the 1% program, leads me to believe that it's not so simple to conclude that a vote against the millage is a vote against funding art in public places using city monies. But a large order of magnitude loss might reasonably lead one to draw that conclusion.
Do you see any analogies to what went on with Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne with regard to their funding of the Detroit Institute of Arts? Or does take any inspiration from that?
Well, I think that, first of all, it's encouraging that that happened, and for the DIA, what Jeff was referring to is the millage that was passed in August for the Detroit Institute of the Arts, and that passed in 3 different counties. So the ability to create those kind of villages, has been there for a while. Our understanding is that through sources that were involved with that millage in Detroit, is that this community, they polled this community, or they talked, whether it was completely formal or informal, I don't actually know, but that even in Washtenaw County, the likelihood that Washtenaw might have approved a millage to support the DIA was there as well. And I understand that both the DIA and Detroit Public Television gets a vast majority of a good chunk, I should say not majority, but a good chunk of their funding from this county. So, all those things, we're kind of predisposed more so to, or fortunately, to those sorts of things. So, but we all know it's a big ballot this year. And how many of you have seen the Myriad McCormick West Wing piece about make sure you flip your ballot over, and answer all of those questions? That's a lot of what we're trying to do with the campaign. Make sure you vote, make sure you tell folks that this is important to vote for, and we hope you'll help spread the word so that they turn that ballot over and do that. So, want to say another question over here? Oh, sorry.
2 points to follow up on that. The first is I think that it's important to note when raising the DIA millage in connection with this millage that they are for very different things.
Absolutely.
And I think folks in here surely know that, but that the DIA millage is related to operating funds, whereas this millage will not provide operating funds for any of the highly valued arts and cultural organizations in the city. That is to say that it only fund city art in public places. It does not work, it does not source the Michigan Theater or UMS or anything like that, so you still need to open your checkbooks for that. With regard to the numerosity of villages on the ballot, understand that there's an optics when you look at A, B, and whatever the library village is. With respect to the...
Proposal 1.
Pardon me, Proposal 1, thank you. With respect to the Proposal B, part of our core message, in addition to the inherent good of art in public places in Ann Arbor, is the village's deeply modest amount. And the fact that it's $1 a month for most for the average household, the average homeowner, I think sufficient will be sufficient to counteract that concern.
Thanks, Chris. First of all, I'm a supporter of the idea of the village. If you look at places around the country, cities where people want to go and live and visit, and vibrant downtowns, I mean, they have public art. But my question is more of a technical one. If it would have passed, would it still be administered by the Public Art Commission, or is there a new body that has to be formed to do that? And what would be the public's role in that?
That's a great question. The Public Art Commission would continue to serve its current function as the conceiver and originator and sort of evaluator of public art programs in the city of Ann Arbor. The Public Art Commission has engaged and is deeply committed to engaging, in a very open and broad-based public process over the art that is designed and conceived of for deployment in Ann Arbor. So I would expect that to continue. At the end of the day, council reviews these projects and votes them up or down. Folks are not particularly shy about contacting council members and letting them know what they feel about things. And so I guess that's how, broadly speaking, the process would work. Public meetings, public input meetings, particularly on the Art Commission side, and then eventual winding its way through to City Council.
Would the village give them the Art Commission any more flexibility in terms of how they engage the public? I've heard a little bit from people that they don't have funding to do some things like web pages and things like that they think could be used to better engage the community. Having public meetings is great, but not everyone can make it to a public meeting or cares to come to a public meeting. And I don't know if that gives them any more flexibility in terms of how they administer the village.
That's a good question. Well, I guess two separate points. One, it would give them, passage of the village gives the Public Art Commission and the city generally a great deal of flexibility, additional flexibility with respect to the types of art that it funds. No longer is the art need to be so closely associated with the capital source. It can be temporary installations, it can be performance art in public places. So there is flexibility there. With respect to methods of outreach, I'm not entirely certain whether that would be a change, and I think Ms. Chamberlain will have a comment on that, and so I turn it over to her.
Thank you, Marcia. If you want to come up here so that that'd be good.
So let me explain a little bit about that, because I think it's
Take the mic.
How much the light?
I see the light.
Could you get me on too?
So certainly one of the concerns about the Public Art Commission is the ability to expedite processes. But at the time it was appointed, there were no city processes for developing a public art program and so forth. We spent humongous amounts of time on that. But in the last 6 months, we have instituted a plan that we really hope creates a lot of civic engagement. The city has this, in the city planning department, something that they refer to as quadrants. Obviously, therefore, there are 4 of them. Each commissioner is assigned to a quadrant, so everybody has 2. And in the month of October, we're doing this kind of public listening tour in public schools, at the libraries, etc. And we're going to continue to do one of those every quarter, where we talk to people about the vision of public art and things that are going on in the city right now, and how they might want to be involved. So if somebody wants to sit on a task force and help select artwork, be part of the voice of the community in that, they can do so. If they want to just come and let their opinion be heard, we're happy to do that. But the idea is to kind of spread the knowledge about public art and spread within the neighborhoods in which people live the participation. And I think we learned a lot from the Almendinger project, because we had our intention was to sort of test it there. And we had a neighborhood group, and they have stayed highly engaged with deciding where, what, when, why, all kinds of things. And that's a really cool process, because public art is supposed to be a kind of democratic, with a small d, kind of process in many ways. And it may end up that we have a Millennium Park sculpture somewhere, and it may end up that we have stamping in cement in other places. But the process that we have instituted is this quadrant process. So I would encourage you, and actually your comment about websites, because we are a city-appointed commission, there are limits to how we can function, or restraints. And so the city website is the website for public art. It has just gone through a huge revision. You'll be able to see all of the projects online, and you'll be able to see when these public tour, listening sessions, videos, everything else are going to be. And I would encourage all of you to come out and sign up to be on a task force. It's a real education. Thanks. Good moment.
Marcia, also quickly, could you talk about how citizens themselves can suggest, recommend projects on locations, and that open process that the commission also has?
Well, there is a process by which anybody can submit a project or an idea for a project. Down here? Okay.
Yeah,
there we go. How's that? Okay. But no reverberation. So that projects have just come to the commission by virtue of somebody's idea on something. And there's a process for kind of hopefully fairly objectively rating that process, against cost and time and location and so forth within the budget, the qualifications of the person suggesting the project, but they have come up literally from the community, and then they have come by virtue of things like, we're building a municipal center, we'd like a major piece of artwork there, and as Chris was talking earlier, that was highly tied to the rain garden, gray water recycling, so that the nature of that project was sort of predefined to some extent. But we also have the ability for people to donate artwork to the city, and we place it almost any way we can think of getting public art into our community. We've now got a policy and procedure for doing it. It took about 3 years, but it's there.
I think something else that's really important about public art is that it creates it creates sort of dialogue. And are you familiar with the Big Read Project, where everybody in the town is encouraged to read one book, and then there's a lot of community discussion about that book, and it ranges, it goes all over the gamut. People love it, don't like it, they don't get this part, they get that part. Public art does that same sort of thing as well, and that's a good thing. And we can't expect ever that every single one of our residents in our community is going to love everything. But I think if we get past that and realize that, there is something for everybody in our community, it's really a very, very positive thing, so.
I have to tell this sort of tale that's related to this. We had an art commission meeting last night, and we were reviewing this slide, this PowerPoint presentation that's going to be part of this sort of listening tour. And one of our commissioners said, well, I'm the only non-art person on the commission. And I went to the University of Michigan, and it never occurred to me that the cube was a piece of art. And I think Connie, who's on the commission, would agree. We all sort of went, really? And he went on to say that for him, every time he went over to spin the cube, it was a stress release for him. That's the way he thought about that piece. Well, the University of Michigan put out a survey of students finding artwork on campus, It just came out online today. And guess what the favorite piece of artwork on the whole campus was? The cube. And so, you go from somebody thinking, that's not really art, to, I would love to run a kind of online competition and have people send in the picture of themselves, their parents, their grandchildren next to the cube. I think we could pretty much paper the front of Angel Hall.
Any other questions? Jan has another one.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just wondering if any of the funds are retained or allocated for upkeep. It seems to me that we've already experienced with the water project that there was in operating or difficulty, but somewhere down the road, whether it be next year or 20 years, some of these pieces of art will need refurbishing of some kind, and I'm wondering what the budget process is for retention of funds for repair.
So you can see Chris and I fighting over the microphone on this. The dry sidle piece, first of all, that is an engineering feat of unbelievable proportions because it's an artistic vision, and then water flows and leaves blow off trees and people put out their cigarettes, or they actually accidentally drop a Kleenex as they're passing by. And I'm quite certain that Herbert Dreisaitl thought about some of those things but couldn't anticipate all of them. Then that was engineered here in Michigan, and the filters that were put in to address the potentials of things like this turned out not to be as small, or whatever you want to call it, as fine a filter as was needed. And so you do, I don't think I know an artist who's ever delivered a piece perfectly at the moment. The sculpture in, what's it called? Over there by the food co-op.
Sculpture Plaza.
Yeah, in Sculpture Plaza. That was done 35 or 40 years ago, and eventually the Art Commission paid to have that reseated because the technology and the thought process available when it was installed are very different than what now happens, and we could do a much better job of making sure that the future of that sculpture was kind of really well established. So it's a double-edged thing. Yes, we're putting aside money for maintenance. I think there's some question about whether, in fact, what happens is once that sculpture's put in Sculpture Plaza, does it become the city's to maintain, or does the Public Art Commission set aside monies for that? Right now, we're being very careful about making sure we can do maintenance on those projects because, times change. The weather's changed, the finish changes, there are better products out there. I don't know, the grid work that's on 4th and Washington parking structure. We had to work for 2 years with the artist on the painted surface for that. And one of the cool stories is a guy on the Public Art Commission at the time was an automotive designer, and he knew how to make paint last. He'd been involved in painting automobiles for a long time, so he went to Ohio, where this artist lived and worked in her studio with her, and said, there are some different paint surfaces that could yield the same result. So it's a back and forth process, but we are trying to build in a system to protect the artwork over years.
And just very quickly to follow up on that, the maintenance provided for those sorts of projects does come in through the initial budget as well. And so that can be connected with the building, for example. If there's art associated with the building, the maintenance for the art can come to the responsibility of the building. I think it's 1, 2.
Okay, well,
The question we're talking about in round terms with the dollar amount is what is the projected dollars that will be in gross dollars, not dollars per person, dollars total over the 4 years, and that is going to go into this program, because you must be able to forecast that. And then also, what percentage of those gross dollars will actually go into art versus administration to make the program work?
The gross of the millage in the first year is projected to be approximately $460,000. And I don't believe, Aaron is not paying for it.
Administrative costs are out of the
Yeah,
city
the
budget.
administrative cost is the ordinary budget. So that is money essentially going, I hesitate to say 100% without knowing that for certain, but for practical purposes, that goes to art.
And
I actually was going to just follow up on what you had said about maintenance. If you look at most cities around the country, the attitude, and I did a lot of research on this, the attitude of most cities in the United States when they have art programs are, when a project is created, it becomes an asset of the city. So it's the city's responsibility to maintain it and to repair it. That's just the same as if you put in brass doorknobs on a door and they fall apart, the city has to replace those. Or if people abuse or break windows, it's an asset. Once it becomes a city asset, it tends to be maintained by the municipality that owns it.
And I'd like to actually speak to that maintenance thing a little bit too, which is, and I have some knowledge of this, but there is a difference between replacing a brass doorknob that you can go and buy at a supply place to repairing or restoring a piece of artwork that is a one-of-a-kind thing. And I think the Art Commission does need to be cognizant of the fact. I certainly would strongly encourage that there be some thought about policy of maintaining significant artworks, that ones that might require some maintenance in the future, and having some inside knowledge of this on the dry settle piece. I mean, there will be, and we've said this all along, maintenance required on that as a water sculpture, a water fountain. There are times when that is going to require significant maintenance over the time period to deal with as things age, pumps get old, and things like that. So it is something, art that doesn't work, that's intended to, that obviously will not be very pleasing to the public. So.
If I may just speak to that, it's very typical in communities, to go along with what both of you just said, that these assets, these artworks, become part of the collection and are curated and cared for in a collection kind of basis, as a museum would for the artworks that they might have in their sculpture garden or something like that. So it's very typical that that happens. And I just want to remind folks that this is really a new program. I mean, for all intents and purposes, what are we, 4 years into it? I mean, yes, there's been a little bit of bumpiness, figuring things out. You mentioned how long it took to get just the process in place. And I think that as we commit to this as a community, it's just going to get improved as time goes on. So just, it's a new thing for us. So and how great that it is in place. So you were counting, who was asking?
Actually, I just wanted to expand on one of the questions that was asked earlier about administration and the cost of administration. The public may not know that the commission is all voluntary basis, and the committees and the task forces that support the efforts are also are all voluntary. So you might want to speak to that.
That's a great point. Often when you think of public interaction, where does the public have an opportunity to get involved? That is it too is self-evident. The public is involved by virtue of the folks being on the commission. That's a great point.
Well, it's not just the commission, but every single piece of work that has been installed in the city has a task force that's made up of artists, business people, people who just have a community interest. There are anywhere from about 6 to 12 people who donate their time to participate in thinking through what's going to happen and how, what the piece ought to be and so on and so forth. And I would say, just going back to the dry settle, it's an example of that. I would say, only with hindsight, it was a monstrously large, sophisticated project. The first project out of the chute. But I think if you look at the 4th and William structure, that's been one that people have responded to and continue to enjoy. I think what happened at Sculpture Plaza has, it creates a sense of place and so forth. And those things, they were all developed with volunteer labor. So there's an opportunity for lots more of that.
Marcia, where's the Almendinger Park piece going to be dedicated? Is that soon?
October 17th, I believe is the date.
So look forward to that and look forward to going over there for that event. Any other questions? Steve?
I'm particularly interested in the performance art aspect of the village. My stepdad and I were roadies for the medieval festival back in the 70s. And there was a movable stage that we drove around for Burns Park, West Park, the Arbor, and the School of Music. And my question is, there's not just Ann Arbor City public land, but also the university is also a public entity. How do you anticipate the village, once it gets funded, and the Public Art Commission working with the youth also to bring public art, not just, temporary public art, but also performance art to the masses with all this public land available?
I believe that although we talk about public places in the ballot proposal, that the charter amendment, the actual amendment, relates to city-owned property, so that it would be, so that you would only be able to source performance art on city property. I'm 80% confidence on that.
Anything else?
You want to make a final appeal?
Well, I don't want to make a final one. I just wondered if we can collectively encourage people to take one of these pieces of paper. If you're inclined to support, to vote for, and to say you like us on our Facebook page for the B for Arbor Public Places, this kind of gives you a whole step of things that you might be able to do, including if you're inclined. Is it okay if I make a pitch for funds now?
Absolutely.
Okay, including if you're inclined to potentially make a contribution to the campaign. We've got to get the word out. We've got to make sure that people flip the ballot over and support this so that it goes through. So that's my encouragement. There's a lot there. Check out the website, some really cool stuff, really cool endorsements. And my colleagues here, anything else to add? Vote often. No.
Thank you so much. Can we get a Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. And one of the nice things are we record these for video, so anyone you know who might be interested, this will be up in next week's issue of Concentrate. So encourage people to come listen to Deb and Chris and Marcia. Deb wants to chime in one more time.
I just wanted to encourage anyone who's really great supporters of arts and culture in our community and our county. On Tuesday morning at 7:30 for breakfast, the Arts Alliance is hosting a candidates forum, focus on arts and culture over at the League. It's a quick breakfast, and we have Congressman Dingell's coming and numbers of other folks. We've got about 10, 11, 12 candidates that are coming to talk to us. And that's important to show these candidates, these public officers, that our sector, the people that support what's important, or the value statement that they make. So please join us, and if you want to know more, Shoshana and I can do that. So thanks, Jeff.
Hey, no problem.
Public service.
Thanks for coming out, and like I said, if you know people who are interested in this and they want to get a lot of the information, I think both Chris and Deb and Marcia give really useful information. Point them to the video. It'll be up starting next Wednesday. I know we even got a call while we were here because it's being broadcast live. They were complaining about the hum from the air conditioner. That's why I had to go out and turn that on. But that's a good sign. People can't be here, they're at least watching it from afar. I hope you'll join us for our next topic, which is yet to be announced. If you have ideas for future conversations, future top subjects for our speaker series, feel free to email me. My email is jeff@concentratemedia.com. And then I have to thank also the Michigan State Housing and Development Association for underwriting this program. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks.